Okay, so while I usually talk about certain architects on the day of the birth, or on the day if they died, or on the day when they died, but in this case, I had the idea to talk about Rafael Moneo because he received the Golden Lion in Venice at this biennial this year, and I thought it would be an occasion to review his works. An important architect, very accomplished. He even ran the Department of Architecture at Harvard for 5 years. So he is not just an architect who builds, but also an architect who teaches. And so this dual activity is very important for him. And he studied, he's from Spain, of course. He studied in Madrid, and he a very rich activity, both academically and with his practice. This is the man. I actually attended a lecture by him that he gave in New York City at Columbia University many years ago. And after the lecture, I wrote, I don't know if I can call it an essay, called "Apropos of Rafael Moneo's lecture." I'm not going to read it tonight, but I have it written. If any of you of the large crowd who is present here today would like to read it, I can send it to him or her. So he does look like a professor somehow, more than other architects. He's a serious architect, and I admire his seriousness. But maybe he's sometimes a little bit too serious. If I can say something like this could be a little problematic to say about something that he might be a little bit too serious. But what I mean is that in the dialectics between work and play, the playing part in his work is less present. But in the context of the society of spectacle, as Guy Debord called our time, it's refreshing and a good thing to come across architects who are serious and who don't play games with architecture, and I imagine in life as well. Anyway, so Spain, of course, gave to the world very important architects. In fact, at Harvard, there was also another Spaniard who was very important and influential, Jose Luis Serre. And in fact, the gentleman we look at right now, Rafael Moneo, received I don't know how to call it, if it is a title, the Jose Luis Serre professorship or something like this at Harvard, after he left the directorship of the Department of Architecture there. Some drawings by him. I don't know if I have here sketches, but I mean, even this drawing in itself shows clearly a serious builder, someone who doesn't play with forms. Here it is kind of a lyrical drawing for the same building that you see here. We are going to look at the work in detail. I'm particularly intrigued by this part, which is darker and shows what might be called forcing a little bit the language, emotionally. Although emotions should perhaps never become isms. But in a world and at a time when many people play with forms, he is consistently serious builder, and As such, I think he has an important role in today's architecture. Now, this is one of his most important works, if not the most important, the National Museum of Roman Art in Merida, Spain, which he built in 1986. And he inspired himself from some Roman arches across the street from where this building is. I think it is impressive in its rhythmicity and the honesty of the tectonics. Is a good work. If I have any reticence vis-a-vis, it might be the flat ceiling roofing. You know, it's something about it which to me seems a little bit problematic, particularly when you consider the succession of very monumental arches, and then are they really necessary to support just that thin horizontal roofing? Um, Somehow it doesn't seem quite justified to have these very solid and monumental arches to support that. But who knows? Maybe I'm subjective. Somehow the flat roofing um, seems to me to be a little bit questionable in relationship with those indeed monumental arches. Otherwise, the building is impressive through its, as I said, seriousness and it is a sober building at a time when there aren't too many sober buildings in the world, really. Uh, Either we have, plainly boring buildings or extravagant buildings, but buildings that are in a serious way asserting themselves and with a obvious quality, these are not so, I don't think they are so common. I mean, even here you see the discrepancy between the arches and the ceiling. You know, the ceiling is belongs to a different kind of architecture, I think. But he is famous. I mean, famous. He's well known for being able to incorporate within a modernistic language some references to history, as we can see here, these arches. He's an architect who doesn't risk too much, and that's why he doesn't surprise too much. But within the limits he sets himself for himself, I think he works quite well. he doesn't ignore function, and he doesn't exalt it either. But he is working within the limits of what functionalism or function prescribes. Now, this is a museum in Massachusetts, in Wellesley, Massachusetts, from 1993. He built in various countries, not just in Spain. Um, I don't know. I am not truly a great fan of Rafael Moneo. Maybe in part because I am more easily seduced by iconoclasm or non-conformity or non-conformism. But I do acknowledge good work when I see it, and I think his work is fine. Although it doesn't surprise one too much, but he's consistent. Moderna Museum, it's a Swedish center for architecture and design in Stockholm. Modest work, in the good sense of the word. It's this white building which blends well with the snow around it. Uh, this could have been built in the 30s in Europe, and it was actually built in 1997. But it's a moderate approach to museum design, and it's modern, but somehow, it's almost a deja vu to an extent. So, but in Sweden, it works because Sweden has its own national reticence, and as such, this building fits well in that culture. But the truth is, the building does surprise one, considering it was built in 1997. It could have been built just as it is, uh, either maybe in the Netherlands, before the Second World War, or some other parts of Europe, mainly Europe. But it's a modernism with a touch of nostalgia in a way. I see it as a modernism which is very close to the orthodox modernism of the early years of modernism. That is before the Second World War in Europe. A building in Madrid, a bank. This one is interesting because of the narrow side, at the corner, and it has some kind of a expression is because of it. I'm talking about this corner here. He's a versatile architect, and you saw what he did in Sweden. You see what he's doing now in Spain, in Madrid. But Again, he's not breaking new ground, really. He's an architect who doesn't make terrible mistakes because he's not taking unbelievable risks. Anyway, he is the recipient of the Golden Lion for at 83. He's 83 years old now, and you know, it's not it's an important award. You know, it's based on his whole activity. And I'm sure it was considered this activity not just in terms of what he built, but also in terms of his educational role. A building in Barcelona. Uh, I was thinking about this, that, you know, Spain had very, at times I almost said violent painters or artists, you know, artists of great courage and with a great appetite for experimentation. But in architecture, they seem to be, but then the specifics of architecture make this possible somehow. That with a few exceptions, well, Antoni Gaudi, of course, was the most famous one. Then more recently, maybe Taller de Arquitectura with Ricardo Bofill when they were still in Barcelona. But otherwise, the architecture is rather almost rational or rationalistic, like we see here too. It's a huge building, as you can see, but you know, it's. I mean, the regularity of the windows, you know, and they're all the same for all this long facade. When you think about the extremes, this work by Rafael, I mean, is maybe not extreme, but because of its size, it is impressive because of the size. Otherwise, architecturally, I don't know. Although you can take nice pictures at some fragments of it, like here. Look at this. This is huge. Then you one single building and one architect. It's a it's a mall, you know. I mean, at the first floors. It's okay. It has an urban presence, but I don't know. It's not a building that astonishes me. Now, this is the Pilar and Juan Miró Museum in Palma de Mallorca. Um, Jose Luis Serra also built for Juan Miró. This is a different kind of work than the ones did by Jose Luis Serra. Here he tries, you see, he is versatile. You know, here he becomes more playful and at least formally speaking, but the sections are still rather, you know, conventional or to be expected. Juan Miró became an industry almost by himself, you know, two museums dedicated to him, and then his own house and atelier was built by Jose Luis Serra, and you know, his fame made him, you know, propagate somehow in surprising ways. A Congress Hall in Spain, also in San Sebastian, a large building. I don't know. Is it impressive? I don't know. It is a Congress Hall. It is big. It is gray. I don't know what to say. But the reflections in the water when the water is this color, which astonishes me because water should never be this color, but it is. So you have this contrast between the light of the building, the color of the building, and the color of the water. And anyway, a Congress Hall, a little bit leaning. So this makes it, you know, a little bit interesting, so to speak, just because of that. I wonder why he made it like this. You know, it's not quite perpendicular on the earth. What could that mean? A questioning of the functions within, maybe. Or they approximate, you know, like two ships, you know, a little bit vulnerable on the water. I don't know. Anyway, the interior is okay. It's a huge space, indeed, a monumental space. And the facade is also interesting, the way it filters the light. And this play with the stairs in this open, large space is, I think, skillfully done. Although one, you know, a strict functionalist might comment in a negative way that if you want to arrive from here to there, or vice versa, you have to zigzag like this. But maybe this is a good idea because it makes you also look around, look back, and so instead of a straight, you know, going up or down in a linear way from here to there, maybe. Texas, Houston, 2000s. Um, what is this? It's Audrey Jones back building. I don't know its function is. Sorry, I was looking for a larger picture. Yeah, uh, it's interesting what is going on the roof. Otherwise, the building is monolithic. Is I don't know. Again, a correct building, but is it enough for a building to be correct? But it's better to have a correct building than one that fails miserably just searching for the so-called, you know, innovation. But this facade, you know, is a little bit, for me, a little bit disappointing with its large surface where nothing happens really besides these things that, you know, help this canopy to stay in place. It's not very imaginative. But the roof, as I said, is interesting. And we see here the roof. You know, the roof, this fragmentation of the roof, I think is interesting. If he would have been able to somehow bring the spirit of the what is happening on the roof to the whole of the building, it would have been, I think, very, very successful. But these skylights are interesting. It's just that what is underneath is too monolithic and too large. Anyway, this is my opinion. But I like the skylights, and this is an interesting picture indeed, with an artwork and you know, somehow unwilling, I mean, an unwilled relationship with the skylight. The Library of Sciences in Belgium from also 2000s, the Catholic University. Here, as you can see, he can be playful. He is experimenting. He's not working just in one way. This is an interesting work, though. The Cathedral of Our Lady of the Angels in Los Angeles from 2002. It's big. It's, it's in Los Angeles and it is a cathedral. It wouldn't be just to call it just a church. It's a cathedral. It has the dimensions of a cathedral, and it is in a city which in itself is some kind of a cathedral. If we are to insult the word cathedral with a multitude of cars that run incessantly on the highways of Los Angeles. Some people think Los Angeles is not a city like Leon Krier. In a certain way, it is not. If you think of the incessant movement of the cars that you know disturb the city continuously. I like the interior. It's monumental. Is well done, and I'm sure uh, I almost said a pleasant experience to enter this building. Although maybe one, to talk about pleasure inside of a cathedral is maybe not totally appropriate, but as an architect entering the building, you might have the pleasure of feeling that the presence of architecture there. So he is not saying no to volumetric, or spatial drama when necessary. And even towards the outside, the building has presence, I think. I don't know if you know, but this building was built by Kop Himmelblau. Wolf Prix is a high school and is quite close to the cathedral by Rafael Moneo. So two European architects in Los Angeles. If a cathedral is the house of God, then a certain drama is perhaps welcomed, maybe even necessary. Museum of Science in Valladolid, Spain. The tower is interesting, and again, he's able to fragment the building at the top in interesting ways. Somehow, what happens at the top is more interesting than what happens at the bottom. I don't think he was responsible for bringing this creature here. But the building has some, I see some references to James Sterling a little bit. Yesterday, I talked a lot about the beast within or the monster within. Well, here it is, but this is not within, but without. Although it has a funny expression. Of course, it's an artifact. You know, it's something made by the humans. But the tower is interesting by Rafael Moneo. Hope I have better pictures. Yes. Well, if I was to am a little bit, you know, maybe audacious, I would say that he's almost there, almost good. Like, for example, here, you know, what is all this part of the building is convincingly done. But then the base seems to be a little bit simplistic. It doesn't seem to articulate perfectly, I think, a connection with what is happening above is, I don't know. But anyway, I am subjective myself. He's a professor. This is the architecture of a professor, almost the quintessential professor. Museo del Prado expansion in Madrid from 2007. I don't know. I mean, again, we have arches and we have a rhythm and we have regularity, and he's saying yes to them, maybe in two obvious ways. I don't think his architecture has enough surprises. He does have surprises here and there, but I think not quite enough. But I think it's better to have no surprises than to have, you know, negative surprises. Although you can have positive surprises unless you also risk having negative surprises. As Einstein said, you know, if you never made a mistake, it means you never tried anything new ever. But when I see the proximity of this old church or cathedral, but somehow this building seems to be a little too blunt and too rational, too box-like. You know, why is it that he didn't connect or try to connect with a building next door, so to speak? You know, it's just I don't know. Anyway, but it is a correct building, so to speak. It's a correct building, but I don't think too many architects in the world would be happy to hear that the evaluation of their works is just having to do with correctness or being correct. I mean, even in this fragment, this building, the old building, has an elan, you know, elan vital, the verticality, the aspiration. Here, it's true, this is a church and this is not, but I don't know, something a little different probably could have been done. This new library at the University of Deusto in Bilbao, 2009. It's monumental, it's big, but I don't know. It is the same kind of architectural language, correct language, but somehow not sufficiently engaging, I would say, for my taste. Look at the section. You know, it's a correct building. It functions probably very well, but somehow I need the sensationalism of a Rem Koolhaas who surprises. You know, sometimes maybe not in very profound ways, but in the playfulness of Rem Koolhaas, he brings in something new. While here, with all due respect, there isn't really a lot of surprise. I mean, why would this building be a library? Does it communicate this meaning through the building as it is? If I didn't know what it was and I looked at the building, I'm almost sure that I would not have thought it is a library. It could have been many other things. A library too, perhaps. I mean, you remember the Exeter Library by Louis Kahn. There you have a different kind of building, and it's a symbolic building, it's a metaphorical building, it's a building that has a vision. Here, what is the vision of this building? It's, you know, with these long tables where you have cubicles or, you know, individual spaces for individual study, but it's, I don't know. I don't think it's very, very engaging. Well, no wonder that the building that put Bilbao on the map was not this building, but of course this is much smaller. But Guggenheim by Frank Gehry. Columbia University, the northwest corner building from 2010 in New York City. Here there are interesting things, and I think it's well built, this tower. I think he is capable sometimes of generating even surprise. The diagonals, as always, help a building to escape, boredom. As for the interior, what can we say? Uh, what can we say? Uh, the demagogy of glass is present here as well. The cubicles are nice. I imagine it's very comfortable to study here. This huge glass wall still bothers me because this requires, without doubt, air conditioning, and thus it is not a very auspicious building in terms of our problems with what we call the climate change and sustainability and so on. And it wasn't built too long ago, actually, 2010, 10, 11 years ago. I think Dillon and Scofidio, who built a building maybe not far away from here, are more interesting than Rafael Moneo. Although this building is probably one of his better ones. Now, if these diagonals are part of the structure, it does seem to be, rather capricious. Uh, anyway, otherwise, aesthetically, these diagonals help indeed. But I would regret if they were just, graphic elements on the facade without some kind of structural function. Princeton, 2013, the Neuroscience Institute, another correct building. But it is an institutional architecture, it's predictably so. Although we have seen the building built by Stephen Hall at Princeton, which is much more interesting and engaging. This one, I think architecture needs theater also. You know, you need to be stirred up with something. And what is stirring us up here? Not much, really. I mean, we appreciate the seriousness, but I think we need also, excitement. And what is to be exciting? What is exciting about this building? I don't see too much source of excitement here. Now you would say, well, why should the building dedicated to neuroscience be exciting? Why not? We know. I mean, maybe we shouldn't go so far away as Frank Gehry does sometimes, or maybe often. But here is, I don't know. I'm not surprised that I feel like yawning. Architecture needs innovation, needs a nerve, needs a verb, and this is too classic. Anyway, the Museum University of Navarra in Spain, 2015. Uh, when I look now at those poor little artworks on that huge wall, I do think of what Peter Zumthor said about the artworks being homeless artworks in an asylum. Yeah, they do seem, somehow, kind of lost on that huge, giant wall. Now, of course, it wasn't Rafael Moneo who placed those paintings there, but otherwise, again, what is happening at the top of the building is beginning to be alive at the top. And here the building does have a certain movement. It's true. It's not contained within a Cartesian box. there is a sense of, emptiness and solitude, and maybe, because the spaces are not, and the buildings are not so very engaging. So that solitary figure there, that silhouette, against the blue sky, and he's alone there, or she's alone. I can't see very well if it's he or she, but no. For me, Rafael Moneo is a good architect, but not one of my preferred ones. And I think I said about the same thing many years ago when I wrote that writing called "Apropos of Rafael Moneo's lecture." I think that's it. So let's congratulate him for receiving the Golden Lion in architecture from the Venice Biennial this year.